Hey, I'm Josh Dillon. So, first of all, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to watch this episode. Before we jump into the next podcast, I just want to take a quick moment to explain to you why we started the Creatre cast. 4 years ago, I founded a company with the goal of connecting Africa to the digital economy and the world to Africa. Over time, we realized that this challenge was a lot greater than what we had expected. In order for us to achieve this vision, it required something extremely important: community. It takes a village. That's why we started the Creatre cast, to create a space where we can interview and profile the members of our community and share how they are connecting themselves to the economy and others too. So that's how the Creatre cast became a thing. We made this podcast with the hope of illuminating what is possible for our people and inspiring you to join the African wave yourself. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what this vision is, but I'm going to tell you at the end of the podcast, and I'm going to let you know how you can get involved too. Until then, let's hop onto the wave. Let's start this journey of elevating Africa. It's a pleasure having you here. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Creatre cast. Today, I've got Francois and I've got Greg, the two co-founders of Next Wave Africa. And today we're doing just a little bit of a discussion in terms of connecting Africa to the digital economy. So as you know, that's what the Creatre community is about, connecting Africa to the digital economy and the world to Africa. And I know these two gentlemen are definitely doing that. So I think to start off today, I wanted to actually ask you a question, Greg. So I know we're talking about connecting Africa to the world and the world to Africa. And one thing that I notice a lot in South Africa specifically is young people don't really have the opportunity to go and travel and experience all these different places around the world. And I was doing a little bit of research, and I know that you had a lot of experience working in different places around the world. I know that you own a company called Sausalito, which is inspired by a place in California, if I'm correct, called Sausalito, aka Saucy. And I know that you also have experience working in Japan. So I wanted to ask you, like, from your career and your perspective, I mean, a lot of the people that watch this podcast are either professionals, entrepreneurs, or creatives. And I know you guys have a lot of experience in the entrepreneurial space and also experience in the professional space. So I wanted to ask you just a little bit about your travels and like working abroad. Like, what was that experience like? How did it influence your passion for innovation, technology, and education in Africa? And how do we tie that back into what you do today?
Well, my first exploration abroad was to Tokyo, Japan in my 20s. I worked for an advertising agency called Young and Rubicon at the time, the branding part of that. The trouble with living abroad is you lose people, you lose family members. I lost my grand and I decided I'm moving back forever to the Bay Area, to San Francisco. Got a job with the most immovable object possible, which is this massive fixed line operator. And I worked there for 6 months until they realized I had 5 years of overseas experience. And they asked me to move to South Africa and build the channel for Telecom South Africa. I said, well, why would I want to do that? And they said, well, triple your salary. And I said, okay, cool. So I came to South Africa in the late 90s. So over the course of 3 stints here, I've been in South Africa for 15 to 25 years. And lived in various places in the U.S. in between Chicago, Texas, California, and so on and so forth. And I've been back here for the last 5 years. And my daughter is in school here and will be here until she graduates. In terms of how it influences me, I think it's hard to see from the inside, but you become very adaptive to culture and people in human behavior. So when I first came, I'll give you an example. When I was in telecom, I was in Pretoria, Francois was there at the same time. I was in marketing, he was in sales. They said, well, there's no money in the Cape Flats. Cape Flats are a series of townships in the Western Cape. I said, really? How do you know? They said, well, look at the banking data. I'm like, well, that doesn't really help now, does it? Because these folks don't have bank accounts. So you go there. You go there and you learn. You go to Princess Plain, you go to Khayelitsha, you go to these, and then you see very busy supermarkets. You see bustling box retailers like a Costco or a Walmart, and you see that there is money, but the people that work around here in this environment sit at their offices and they expect to understand what's actually going on in a place that they understand nothing about. So I kind of over the course of my career, I made a point to actually go places and challenge the conventional wisdom on what's happening, and what those customers need, or what those consumers need, what those people need.
It's funny that you say that. It reminds me of a story because there's that story of a guy who comes abroad and comes to Africa, and he gets there and he's a part of a shoe company. And he gets there and he sees that, no one's wearing shoes. So he goes to his boss and he says, no, I went to Africa. We're a shoe company. We're not going to sell any shoes here. No one's wearing shoes. Whereas their competitor came and went back to his boss and said, this is the greatest opportunity ever. No one's wearing shoes. We need to sell shoes here. So like coming from like a kind of like a different country, right? And from growing up in a different country, and just from a business perspective, what was it like when you came to South Africa? Was it a bit of like a shell shock for you? Because I know from the other context, we'll have certain people that are watching this that will go abroad and they'll be like completely shocked, because in South Africa, we're dealing with like load shedding, we're dealing with crime. I mean, one thing that I was in an Uber the other day and I was telling him about my experience going to Portugal last year to visit my family. And I was telling him how in Portugal, people they literally don't need to lock their cars, because it's just that safe. And he was just like so shocked. He was like, are you serious? How is that possible? And I think we've kind of become acclimatized here in South Africa because we deal with all these challenges. And a lot of people haven't had, like I mentioned, they haven't had the opportunity to go abroad. So I think just from your perspective, like what was it like? What was it kind of like a shell shock coming to Africa and comparing it back to home? And what were kind of the differences so people that are watching this can kind of get a sense from a business perspective how it is different abroad?
Yeah, it's probably different for me than other people because I had 5 years in Tokyo. And in Tokyo, it's like nothing's more different than that. Even though the language is different, not just the language, but the characters, the culture is quite different. The religions are quite different. It's a city of 30 million people, Tokyo. So I wasn't shell shocked per se. I found Johannesburg specifically to be very much like Los Angeles. Yes, there's an abundance of poverty then and now for different reasons. But people drive BMWs and we have heaters in the home and we have satellite TV. We have my friends that lived in Singapore at the time, or had come from Singapore, were like, this is the best thing ever because now we get all the sports channels. We can watch cricket and rugby and football or whatever it might be, which you couldn't get in Singapore at the time. So for me, it was less of a shock, but the poverty was something really, because it's right there. It's right there in your face on a daily basis at every traffic light you stop at. I think one of the big surprises for me is I'd be in my area, which is what they typically call the leafy suburbs. Northern suburbs, and you'd be driving past the supermarket and you have these domestic workers, maids, leaving the supermarket carrying all these bags of groceries, and then they get into a taxi and say, well, why are they shopping here, getting in a taxi and traveling to where they live? This makes no sense. And say, no, because there's no supermarkets where they live. So just like your example with the barefoots and the shoes, it's like, well, why don't we just build supermarkets where the people live? Why don't we build telecommunications or service offices in where people live, which they did, but they weren't doing at the time. Those are the kind of low-hanging opportunities we found in terms of being able to say, hey, wait a minute, let's just use some, not just common sense, but outsider's perspective and say, wait a minute, this is an easy problem to fix. And there's hard problems to fix as well. And that does require a lot more work, but placing service centers and supermarkets where people live seems kind of intuitive.
For sure, yeah. And we'll probably touch on this topic a little bit later down the line of this podcast, but you kind of highlighting that digital divide, right? And I think one of the benefits of like working in a third world or second world country is that we're not at the forefront of innovation. So when it comes to innovation, it takes a lot of energy and resources to create new ideas, and you have to invest a lot to get very little return. Whereas overseas, a lot of these things have been created, but I'm pretty sure, I'm keen for you to kind of expand on this later down the line. I'm pretty sure you weren't able to completely directly copy and paste what you had known abroad here. You kind of have to adjust it to the situation and the perspective. But I want to, Francois, you've been a bit quiet. I don't know how your perspective is, because you're from, you were born and bred in South Africa, but I know that you recently were in Dubai, right?
Wow, awesome. I mean, it's always good. In the old days, you never traveled. I mean, even to make an overseas phone call was too expensive. So you literally lived in your circle or your cubicle And these days, I think the opportunity is so amazing because you can literally, I mean, on my way here from my car, I was speaking to someone literally overseas, so things have changed so much. And I was in Abu Dhabi at the, ADEX. It's the biggest armor fair in the world. And I think the next one is actually in South America. Just this morning, they said. So it's easy to travel. It's easy to be everywhere. I mean, you literally get on a plane here and you can sleep, and tomorrow you're in London, when you wake up. So I don't know what's the difference, except that you might not have your own bed. Depends on how much money you have. You can sleep comfortable or you sit comfortable and sleep. It depends on that. But I mean, it's amazing. And I love the cultures. I mean, I live in Pretoria in South Africa, and, the diplomats, they're all living in this area. I mean, I meet a lot of diplomats, and the cultures are amazing. I mean, I really enjoy talking to other people. I mean, Sunday we were sitting and having coffee where all, in the village. And then there was two people literally from Australia on their way back to New York, but somebody told them to come to South Africa and now they're so disappointed because they were here for 2 weeks and they wanted to stay longer, but they were scared that it might be, as you just said, when Greg came here, it might be dangerous but they love it. They're actually going to come back and because it's so cheap, the dollar to the rand is 17 or 18, rand to a dollar. So, and the quality of the food is good. And I know that. I mean, I've traveled the world, as well. And this is the place I want to live and then fly from here, because I think there's nothing like home, and people say that, if there's diplomats staying here, they like it here, but a lot of them want to go back to their houses, which makes sense, So I'm quite excited. Things have changed a lot. We are doing a lot. All these fairs that I attend abroad, I meet people that want to come into Africa, and that's where me and Greg, has collaborated on doing this. And it's just picking up because we're 54 countries with 1.4 billion people, untouched. It's the only continent that hasn't been developed, and I'm super excited for what's coming, and to build this up to a point. And as excited I am, we excite the people on the other side as well, because there's a lot of people that has tried to come to Africa, but because of no network or culture or, they just decided, no, it's not for them because it doesn't make sense, because they don't know where to start. There's literally people 2-3 years trying to do business in Africa, or South Africa. Some lost money, some of this. And now they realize it costs them half the price because we're here, and we bring them a base immediately, because of our network. So, but yeah, I mean, it's I love it. I love it here. We don't have, power issues. We have this, but we work around it. We're from Africa. When I was in Atlanta in December and Christmas, I went on the underground. People said, it's maybe not safe, and I didn't feel unsafe at all. I mean, I would obviously not walk maybe 12 or 2 o'clock in the morning in the streets or whatever, anywhere in the world, but as well in South Africa. So it's amazing how people starting to collaborate to work together. And that's what I like about this. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think tech has really made that accessible. I actually wanted to find out, you kind of alluded a little bit about Next Wave Africa and what you do. How did you guys actually meet?
Because of the ambassadors and the area that I stay in, I'm surrounded by them. So I've met Lorenzo, which is one of the other board members, advisory members actually on our company. And he immediately, I had coffee with him. And when he just, he was 35 years plus for United Nations into Africa. And when he heard what I did, because I had this model, but I did it on my own because I just saw the gaps from abroad, and I literally went to some companies and I started conversations. And while I was in Abu Dhabi, I had a call with a South African company. I was in Abu Dhabi, and the other company was in London. So that's how easy it is to just connect these guys. And I just saw a huge opportunity. And then Lorenzo phoned Greg, and the next day, I think I met Greg in Santon. We went up. That's how quick it started. And then the next month I was on the advisory board, which was great. So this is how this whole thing evolved.
Okay. So am I correct in saying that, Greg, you had started this before Francois had come on board?
Yes. We've been going for about a year in events. We started in financial services with the problem statement being there's all these financial services companies, banks throughout Africa. They know they need this innovative fintech or financial technologies or technology specifically for banks and insurance companies. They don't know who to talk to. They don't know who's interested in doing business in the country. They don't know how to evaluate product. And on the other side, you have these American and European companies saying, I want access to the last, as Francois referred to it, the last frontier of development in the world. They don't know who to talk to. And it can be quite a long journey developing a business in Africa. But if you have the right connections, the right network, the right structures, it can move quite quickly. So prior to Francois coming on board, most of our deals that we're doing were outside of South Africa and Africa. But since Francois came on board, it's been more in South Africa, more multinational corporations, and most of the multinational corporations operating in Africa are headquartered in South Africa. So it's been a fun few months, that's for sure.
No, that's awesome. And like, I know that Next Wave Africa is very much focused on introducing technology programs throughout the continent. And really like, that's where the main forefront of what you guys are doing lies. So what are some of the success stories from Next Wave Africa? What are some of the initiatives that have had the most impact and projects that Next Wave Africa has been a part of?
Yeah, Francois can answer that.
Since we started, and let's start. I mean, say December and January didn't count, sort of, until half of January. I can literally bring one new company a week on board, but there isn't time, because there's a lot happening. And then when we bring them on, from the next week, we can introduce them to people. So it's not a difficult process. But I mean, if I see how people have suffered to get into Africa and how positive, and they're reaching out to us to help them, which is great, because they literally suffered or gave up actually on Africa. But now there's, if you create hope with people, it gives them that energy again. And that's all that happened. I mean, we had a call yesterday, me and Greg, with a guy in the US, which I met him in Las Vegas, and I took his card, I reached out to him, and then we got to speak. And they are quite excited to get this going. I mean, they've got budget, they got everything going, they've got a good product, and we can help them to get it out. That is what they want. I mean, they know they need to come to Africa. A lot of people know Africa is the next development continent, but they didn't know how. And I mean, this guy is super successful. Where he is, he's doing well. They flew in private jets. I mean, he was telling stories of how they, with the system, we can bring all those things to Africa. We got all that potential here that we have, that they had there in any case, So I've been in America and I've been in Europe. I've been in London. I work with Saudi Arabia a lot. I like that country as well. So, the opportunity is endless, and we haven't even scratched the surface of what we're doing. This is just the beginning of a big thing.
Yeah, and the opportunity, it kind of works both ways, like people are trying to get into Africa, but then there's also certain, like we have one of the highest unemployment rates, especially amongst young people. So I think there's also a lot of opportunity for them, right? So like, I think it's just what you guys are doing is basically connecting the two sides of the equation together. So a lot of the people that will listen to this will be young entrepreneurs or professionals who are exploring opportunities. A lot of them are actually like sitting at home trying to find stuff to do and stuff to work on. Considering that you guys have a lot of access to these people that are abroad, that are looking for opportunities in Africa, what would you guys say is like the best way for people to approach those opportunities and maximize what they can leverage from those opportunities? What advice would you have for someone listening who is like hearing all of this and is like, I want to be a part of this, but I'm not too sure how to do that?
If you don't mind, I'll open with that. So that's it. You can pick up on it. I did a leadership masterclass for an organization that Josh, you're affiliated with, which is Value Ed. They provide, it's an edu-tech company. They provide online education programs or sessions for young people, and young within South African context is under 35. Often college graduates, often ambitious, often underemployed, mostly very, very, very smart people. And I talked about how to start a business, and how to get started, and what you should be focusing on, and how everybody should have a side hustle if they have a job. And these are the ways you can, study things you're good at, things you love, and things that people need. to buy. And then we got into this whole AI thing and the Chat GPT, and I started demoing some of the things you could do with this AI tool to actually create content and solve problems and write legal contracts and those kinds of things. That was like an eye-opener for them. But I think the bottom line is pre-COVID and there's post-COVID. I call it BC and AC, before COVID and after COVID. Before COVID, especially the Americans and probably even more so the Europeans, they wanted to see you face-to-face. They wanted to have a telephone call from a number in the UK if you're in the UK, from France if you're in France, in order to engage with you in any kind of way. Now, all of these multinationals are looking abroad to find the cheapest, most valuable resources they can, and that's where we are today. So you got a company in Palo Alto, California. They don't care if their developers are in India or Cape Town or Bangladesh or Brazil. They actually don't care. They're just trying to put together teams that can actually deliver at prices lower than what they can achieve at home. Francois?
I had this idea in the past, and then I'm part of a group, a global group, where people pitch their ideas, which is a big need. I mean, and Josh is spot on with that, and I just want to fill on with what Greg said now. But this guy's got like 20 or 30 people on a call, and he pinpoints. So he will literally say, "Okay, Josh, what is your idea?" And then he will pitch what he started in his garage or his room or whatever. And 30 other people or 50 or 100, I mean, because it will grow, they listen to what he says and can learn from that. And then I'm not the expert, but I mean, I can say, I know someone, so I can just redirect them into direction, or I can say, but I know someone that has tried this, and maybe this is, maybe we should do something. They just need that help, point one. And then there's people on there that's looking to fund some of these things. So you got a funder, you got the super entrepreneurial guy. But a lot of these things die because of funding, because of, it won't work. I don't have market. I can't get, people give up because they just couldn't get to the right people. So if we can create a platform like that, I will definitely love that, because, I mean, this guy that's doing this globally literally goes on this, and then he makes a note. He loves some of these ideas so much that he says, well, I'll see you in London next week because I'm going to come and see what you're doing. I mean, that's how amazing this is. So he flies all over the world after all these people, and have started a lot of businesses with him, because he knows funders, and he's doing well. I mean, he's literally, so I would love that, because I mean, I think the graveyard is the richest place on earth with all the ideas and songs that's never been written. So before that happens, let's live every day, and you only die once. They always say it the other way around, but let's create that attitude again amongst people.
Yeah, something that we've all shared now is our love for South Africa and how we believe that it's such an amazing place. I think the only thing that's really holding it back is some of the governmental challenges and economic challenges that we face here. And in order to really overcome those challenges, one of the big things we need to focus on is that unemployment rate and help uplifting people, because I think with all the crime and that kind of stuff melts away as we increase the standard of living. And the way that we do that is by fostering entrepreneurship. When you have people that are creating businesses that are employing people, that helps kill that unemployment rates and also uplift people's standards of living. I think a lot of young South Africans really see that and they identify that opportunity. They have no idea where to go. And you guys have given such good advice in terms of that. So Greg, the one thing that you touched on was like the skills development, right? That's something that's super important. And being a part of a community as well, I think is also important, because they always say like, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. The people that you surround yourself by are what you actually become. So finding those pockets of people and connecting with them, people that are learning, that are growing. And that's why I love Valuate as a platform, because it creates that space. And we're trying to learn a lot of what we've learned from Valuate and bringing that also to the Creatre community. And I think that kind of is where Creatre community is kind of where France overlaps with what Francois was saying, right? Having that place where there are people that are all entrepreneurs and breeding that culture of entrepreneurship, because I don't think we have a strong culture of entrepreneurship in South Africa. And I think by kind of creating that culture and and sharing it with people and making it inclusive, I think will really do a lot of good for South Africa in terms of uplifting it and providing opportunities. So if you're someone watching and you want to kind of get the opportunity to pitch to guys like Francois and Greg, please definitely like follow us and see what we're working on, because we want to make this a reality. And I think by doing that, we can really create that space where we're connecting people from around the world that want to connect with Africa and people that want to connect with them. And I think that I love that idea and I love that vision. And I think conversations like these are what spark that those ideas into reality. So Francois, I know that you have done a lot of work with Macrocom, which focuses a lot in the digital space as well, Internet of Things, smart city management. When I hear the term smart city management in the South African context, my initial reaction is like, we're trying to deal with load shedding. How are we going to have a smart city, you know? So from your perspective, like, what do you think are the best ways to take solutions that you've seen abroad? Like, I'm sure when you went abroad to Dubai as well, you probably saw a lot of technology and things that are being worked on there that we could bring here in South Africa that can benefit South Africa. But obviously, as we like mentioned earlier, what Greg was saying in terms of like transferring into the African context, what kind of technology have you seen abroad that can open up opportunities for people in Africa and can kind of be adjusted into our context?
Yes, so there's a lot. I just want to add, and then I'll start with a new one on what we stopped on the last one. You know, I mean, I want to thank the mentors that was on my life, and I think that's what we said. We want to be mentors to these guys that's looking and searching for people. I mean, you know, in the old days, a few years back, I had people which we met 6:45 on a Monday morning in Melrose Arch, and we were 4 guys in a mind power group. And the stuff that came out there made you grow, you know, literally vertically, which is great. So I would like to start a business book discussion. Well, you read a chapter a week, even if you want to do it that slow, and discuss that chapter. So Think and Grow Rich from Napoleon Hill was my first book, and I want to do that again. And I'm going to actually do it again. So if there's people that want to join, that will be great to start that or to join that club. And then technology-wise, there's a lot. You know, I mean, IoT, I started in Telkom. There was, when I was still there, 2015, they tried to get the IoT thing going. And I think it was just too early for the world because it wasn't developed yet and it was maybe too expensive. But things have changed a lot. And there's a lot of things that you can do just in your own house. So my house, I'm a tech gadget guy. So everything here is either, you know, there's something tracking something or doing some. I love the AI that's coming because, I mean, my, I don't want to say the word because then she's going to respond, speaker in the kitchen, although she's listening. When I come in the kitchen in the morning, I ask her to tell me a joke. But I would love her when I come there to say, hey, Francois, would you like to hear a joke? Because this is what you do every morning. Or, you know, I need to act with her, interact. I need that responsiveness from like a real human or AI component. Which is great. But I mean, in your own house, there's a lot of things that we can do to do things smarter. I mean, on top of the geyser is one of the things that 60% of your house energy or power consumption is from your geyser. And a lot of people like this long weekend. I promise you, if you check and could do a survey and say how many people left their houses and the geysers were on, because nobody just switched it off. And there's a lot of people that does that, which is actually bad for your geyser, for any electronic equipment to be hard switch on and off. So how many people have wasted money this weekend on electricity and nobody was at home to shower or whatever? So even if you leave your house in the morning and you come back at night, you only shower in the morning and the evening. The chance that you might shower or use warm water in the day is fine because the geyser keeps the water. You can actually, the geyser 2 or 3 days, you will have actually hot water in the house, you know, without having the element on. So there's a lot of things that you can do, smart lights, smart locks. I mean, when I was in Atlanta, the people weren't home when I got there. They just said, there's the code. If you get there, just punch in this code electronically. You'll get it when you're on your phone. And I got access to the house. I didn't even have a house key. So I'm just saying, and they live in Georgia and Alpharetta. And the doors and everything is the same then, yeah. We got networks in our house. It's easy to access. We don't need keys anymore. You know, I mean, if you think about it. And it's also dangerous, I think, because if somebody hacks something, everybody can have access to everything. Because cybersecurity is a big thing. as well. And now when I was in Abu Dhabi, I came upon amazing cybersecurity companies. I mean, this was a military show, so you can imagine a lot of the things in the world that has commercialized was ex-military equipment, like a microwave. It was used in the military, and they commercialized it. So all those advanced technologies will be commercial. Well, not all. Most of the smart ones that make sense will be commercialized. So there's nothing that we can't track. I mean, I literally, I can tell you of weird things that we have tracked or had to, people silos, where people who have grain in it. They literally couldn't determine how many grain was that till a few years ago. Simple things, So there's a lot. We track livestock now. We can track rivers, mines, the dams under in mines. It's a big issue because that water is toxic, so that we can actually determine predictive maintenance is a big thing. Before something happens, we warn you. So like in Saudi, there was 200 and something flare detection units where these flames, where people literally had to sit and look at these flames every day, because if it goes a certain color or angle, they must report it. And literally the edge computing AI component on the cameras just had a machine learning factor on it. And it was just checking that flame and learn it better than a human, because it's just smart. I mean, you don't need 3 people to look at a flame. It's one camera, and it's 24/7, no lunches, no sick, it just works. And that was that's the Adidas I was speaking about. But yeah, so there's a lot of things that's just, and it's just getting better. So I get super excited because I make things smarter, and it doesn't cost you cheaper because volume pushed the price down. So things is just easy these days. I mean, if you think about things, just by traveling with a GPS in your car, I find routes to a specific spot. On top of when there was an accident and it warns you. On top of that, it just reroute me. I always in years driven a longer route, and I thought that was the quicker one, and it's not. Now, because of this, I get smarter. I save time, and I save money because, I mean, I'm just doing things smarter. So, and I'm not going to stop at this. I'm going to actually find better things and bring it, and the world is evolving so fast that we won't be able to keep up. It's just, I don't even get that latest phone anymore because it's just too quick. These things just doesn't happen every 2 years anymore. It's now every 3 months there's a new phone.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to stay up to date with what's happening, right? Because there's so many opportunities that come with all this new technology. One of the biggest challenges that we face in South Africa is load shedding. Has there been any sort of like tech that you found overseas that can help alleviate the load shedding challenges that we have here? I mean, you mentioned a little bit about batteries to me the one day. I don't know if you'd like to share a little bit more about that. And then also, if you want to share some stuff about the Wi-Fi powered light bulbs. I don't know. That was also something that you mentioned.
Well, I have one, yeah. So my front light's outside, obviously. So I can literally from my phone, if I'm home and I'm leaving home, say now, it's 4 o'clock or nearly 4 o'clock p.m. in South Africa. And I'm leaving, I'm not going to leave my outside light. And a lot of people do it because they know they're coming back at 8 o'clock at night. So I remember when I was a child, we left the outside light on for when we come back. But I mean, why? How stupid, how much energy are we losing? But, wasting. And I can literally do it from my phone. So I bought that in Abu Dhabi when I was there. And I bought a screen unit for my kitchen as well, So on the solar stuff, it's easy because that tech is also, I mean, there's still a lot of people using lead cell batteries, and lithium batteries is obviously the better one for now. But now I've collaborated with guys because of the global footprint with newer technology. So there's a smarter battery that will come out that will cost you literally half the price of a lithium battery. It will be bulkier and bigger, but I don't care to have a bulkier, bigger thing in my garage if my house can stay on, instead of a 5 kilowatt, I can have a 10 kilowatt battery now at half the price. And it lasts longer. So it's got a 20-year guarantee, some of these things, which is amazing, So that's the one thing. And then the inverters will change to micro inverters. So I'm going to get that spec soon as well. And then, so things are getting smaller and smarter, and it will last longer. So, I mean, and on top of that, I mean, I've got 6 panels on my house, for a lot of people which I visit, some people have just installed 8, 10, 12, and I know it depends on how many people live in your house and how to consumption. But I think there's a lot of overselling out there, and I don't want to, I think that people just need to be fair with the guys. You don't need so much, and if you don't know what you don't know, that's sad, because a lot of people realize that. And then, but I mean, you literally need what you're consuming. You can't have more than you're using, which is then it doesn't make sense. But there's definitely newer stuff coming out, and I think it's good if we can start sharing that, because the inverter market and solar and power backup systems is not going to go. I mean, there's a lot of people in this country that doesn't have that yet, and I was just in conversations now again for universities that's looking for that. So there's people actually budgeted for this, and I know a lot of people is budgeting for that. But we have partnered with a great finance house, which everybody knows. It's a well-known name. To finance it as well, if you want to finance it, or if you want to do a capital layout, that's also fine. But at least we can tell you. So I measure the power in your house or your building or your business, and I tell you what you use, so that you can see I'm not overselling you. I'm giving you exactly what you need. And if you do that, people trust, which is good. And then I've partnered with the biggest importer in the country and people that does a proper installation, because you also need the right certifications and stuff to be done. You don't want your house to be burned off, and then the insurance won't pay off or pay out because of you got the wrong installation. But there's a lot of things coming, so I think if we can have sessions like this and follow up. But let's see how the feedback is on this one. I'm sure it will be good. I'm positive. And then, let's have a follow up for sure.
Just over about what Francois is saying, for each one of those installations for solar or for inverters, we inverters into the DV board. So it doesn't power your appliances, but it does power your Wi-Fi and your TV and the important stuff. Those are all jobs. There's a shortage of those jobs in this country. So get us to go do a couple of installations a day. You're going to make a very decent living. Over and above that, and everything Francois said, we're talking to 2 companies overseas that are in that kinetic energy space. That's energy generation. So yeah, solar panels are great unless the clouds, come over, or it's nighttime, stuff like that. Windmills are great as long as the wind's blowing. But trucks and trains are always going, and they're always generating heat, and that heat just goes into the ether and it never gets captured. So there's companies out there that are developing technology and in prototype and in trials where they actually, like a truck, will capture the heat from the tires and from the engine, capture that into a battery pack, and that battery pack can power 100 homes for 2 weeks, or whatever the number is, over a couple $100-mile trip. So those things are that there is just like a $5 billion business in South Africa, or in Africa. It's everybody's got an energy problem. So yes, it's conservation, but it's also generation.
Yeah, I've always had this idea when it comes to gyms, for example, right? You don't want to. Everyone in the gym is exerting energy on a daily basis, on a consistent basis. So in my mind, it's like, why are we not charging the batteries within the gym to run the gym off of people's exercise, and I think that's kind of like a similar concept. Obviously with the trains and the trucks, it's on a more larger scale because there's constant transportation happening every day. And I think that could have real potential to help make a dent in the energy crisis that we're facing. And Francois mentioned something earlier about how tech has been developed to identify the different flames at, I think it was refineries that you said. So a lot of people have this fear of AI taking their jobs. And Greg, I know that you have recently started, or you've had your business and you've kind of pivoting it into the AI space. So I wanted to ask you, for someone who's out there, I mean, we're already facing unemployment at high levels. Now we've got this tech coming into the game. A lot of people are looking at this tech and saying, we already have unemployment. This is going to take some certain jobs. Should I be worried about that?
No, you don't need to, because I've been through this exercise, and a lot of people said that. You're right, but you know what? If I do certain things to your business, productivity goes up. And if productivity goes up, there's more that needs to be. So they actually appointed more people on one of the mines that we did some of these things because of the people that was redeployed. And then because of everything working smarter, then they needed more people, because you still need people. You will never. I know there's a hotel in Japan that has robots. When you check in, you speak to a robot, so AI, because you can only ask her so much. I mean, where's breakfast, where's my room, the basic stuff that you will ask, where can I go in town, simple things. So, but you will never replace a human. I mean, that's for sure. But we can do things smarter. I mean, I can literally, and I've been through that exercise. So we're actually creating jobs by making your business smarter because your productivity goes up. Greg, I don't know if you want to add to that. No.
Yeah, so I have a couple of points. One is there was a factory in the U.S. that made bicycles 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and they went in and automated the factory. And they said, "Oh my gosh, the jobs are going to go away." And some jobs did go away. They no longer needed to sweep the floors and this kind of manual stuff. But that company went from 100 employees to 250 employees in 3 years because they were able to make better products cheaper and sell it for cheaper and able to expand into overseas markets. So in that example, they doubled their workforce, or workforce went up by 40%, whatever it was, but they're different jobs. Those are software jobs, basically managing the machines, right? When you go look at another period of automation, automobiles in the 20s and 30s, people were actually having the same concerns about, oh my gosh, where are our jobs going to go? What about all the horses, right? And what about the guy that follows the horses? Nobody's worried about his job, but they were. They were worried about his job. But then there's jobs created to manufacture these automobiles, to innovate these automobiles, the spare parts, servicing the entire energy sector is built around the automotive sector, asphalt and pavements on the roads rather than dirt roads. All this stuff developed as a result of the automation of this new invention, but nobody could foresee what it is. So my contrarian thesis is we'll be able to, in average business, we'll be able to cut out the number of professional services that they spend money on, accountants, lawyers, marketers like us, content creators, social media, whatever it is. They'll be able to actually do that themselves. And my thesis is you don't need fewer people, it's to train the people to use these AI tools. So one marketing manager can build websites on one day and do the whole social media calendar the next day and so on and so forth. So I think there is opportunities, but as human beings, I don't think we have the brain capacity to work out. As I always say, the future predictions are difficult, especially about the future. So looking out 5 years, there's going to be a lot of change. There's been a lot of change in the last 4 months since ChatGPT's come through. But I think that's going to evolve. I don't think we really know how it's going to play out. And in general, automation creates jobs. It doesn't destroy them throughout history.
Thank you for sharing that. I found myself the other day having an existential crisis thinking about technology and how it's evolving so quickly. I don't know if you guys saw that letter that was signed by 1,000 tech professionals, including Elon Musk and some other guys. And yeah, what are your thoughts in terms of AI? So as we've all determined, AI is moving so quickly. And these guys were saying, look, we need to stop this for 6 months. Do you guys reckon that the reason why that they are requesting for this thing to be stopped is because it's adding so much disruption in the economy that it's kind of threatening the business interests that they already have? Or do you feel like it's more kind of like an actual safety issue where we don't know how this is going to all unfold and we don't want the robots to come and kill us at the end of the day?
I think it's a safety issue. I think they need to contain this thing, make sure it doesn't get out of control.